alive and clad with trees and herbs and flowers. Earth's great brown body smiled towards the skies. Then spring, an ardent lover, leaped through leaves and caught the earth bride in his eager clasp. His advent was a fire of irised hues. His arms were a circle of the arrival of joy. His voice was a call to the transcendent sphere, whose secret touch upon our lives keeps ever new the thrill that made the world, remolds an ancient sweetness to new shapes, and guards, intact, unchanged by death and time, the answer of our hearts to nature's charm, and keeps forever new, yet still the same, the throb that ever wakes to the old delight and beauty and rapture and the joy to live. His coming brought the magic and the spell. At his touch, life's tired heart grew glad and young. He made joy a willing prisoner in her breast. His grasp was a young god's upon earth's limbs. Changed by the passion of his divine outbreak, he made her body beautiful with his kiss. Impatient for felicity, he came, high fluting with the koel's happy voice, his peacock turban trailing on the trees. His breath was a warm summons to delight. The dense, voluptuous azure was his gaze. A soft, celestial urge surprised the blood, rich with the instinct of God's sensuous joys. Revealed in beauty, a cadence was abroad, insistent on the rapture thrill in life. Immortal movements touched the fleeting hours, a godlike packed intensity of sense, made it a passionate pleasure even to breathe. All sights and voices wove a single charm. A storm, the life of the enchanted globe became a storm of sweetness and of light and song, a revel of color and of ecstasy, a stream, a hymn of rays, a litany of cries, a strain of choral priestly music sang, and swung on the swaying censer of the trees, a sacrifice of perfume filled the hours. Ashokas burned in crimson spots of flame. Pure like the breath of an unstained desire, white jasmines haunted the enamored air. Pale mango blossoms fed the liquid voice of the love-maddened koel, and the brown bee muttered in fragrance mid the honey buds. The sunlight was a great God's golden smile. All nature was at beauty's festival. There are a number of flowers named for Sri Aurobindo, and I had the great blessing from the mother to have sent her some between 60 and 80 flowers from the Matrimandia Gardens nursery, and she named one Remembrance of Sri Aurobindo. Another one is opening to Sri Aurobindo's force. And the third one is one we all know, I believe, Sri Aurobindo's compassion. Now it's interesting that Sri Aurobindo was asked the question, why does the flower that is named your compassion fade so quickly? And he answered, my compassion does not fade with its symbol. And then he makes one of the greatest, most beautiful statements I have ever read. Flowers are the moment's representation of things that are in themselves eternal. So that moment's representation of something that is in itself eternal is embedded in the vibration of every flower. In the late 1960s, I began work with 3 other people, Richard Pearson from the ashram, my wife, Mary Helen, and Mary Aldrich, an English lady. My specific work was the botanical aspect. Where's my book? And this was the result in 1973, I believe, that this book was printed. Now, it's by botanical name. And we're going to go very deeply into the flowers this morning. Sorry. Just came loose. Okay. But before we do, I want to talk to you about a new book that I'm working on. And I want to enlist the help of every one of you who are open to the flowers. You see, the first book was done by botanical name. If you didn't know the botanical name, how did you find the significance? The second book, which was done in 2 volumes, many years later, I think in 2000, was called The Spiritual Significance of Flowers. A work of 10 years with a German lady and an American man, photographing flowers all over Oroville and the ashram. And it was done according to my suggestion, and didn't work out so well, but by significance. But if you didn't know the significance, how did you find the flower? So this book that I wish to do is a new book, and the inspiration was given to me by the divine, and it is so simple. On this part of the book, you will have a rainbow. You open to the blue section, and all the blue flowers Mother named are there, from small to large. Orange section, red section. So simple. But we have to do it. We've been working on it for 2 years already. But we can break this down also. Once we have it done, we can do small books on trees. Suppose you're looking one day for just the flowers of trees, or shrubs, or aquatics, or little annuals or perennials. We can have small books. I'd like it to be very inexpensive, so it can be carried in a pocket or purse, and when it's worn out, a new one can be purchased. And that's my aspiration. I'll need your help. Photographs, we have many, but not all. And they have to be beautiful photographs. Because in the second volume, the two-volume edition, we were still in the world of transparencies and negatives. Now, with the digital advance, we have possibilities of absolutely perfect color. But when they had to go to a printer, and he had to take the image and then print it, or at least first expose it and then print it for the book, many of the colors are totally wrong in the two-volume edition. Unfortunately, that was the time of, that was the past. All right, so with that introduction, we will begin on the sadhana of flowers. We asked the mother many, many questions. I sent her questions and she gave extraordinary answers. For example, in the Matrimanya Gardens nursery, we would work for a month to grow beautiful flowers, and in a day or two, insects would come because they had never seen a feast like this, and they would consume everything. So I wrote to Mother, is there in nature a conscious, hostile force towards the flowers through the insects? And Mother answered very interestingly, it's not like that. Insects do good and they do bad. Just like that. And so we see that insects pollinate fruit, vegetables. The bees, look what the bees do. They pollinate, they make honey for us. So I learned a great lesson there. Balance and never eradication. Balance of the species. Work in harmony with nature. She's very wise. So let me read to you what Mother has said in some. Oh, she answered so much. We asked her, would you make a comment on each flower? And she said, yes, but I want to see the flowers first. So we had to collect hundreds and hundreds of flowers to show to her. And of course, she knew flowers from the West. She knew daffodils and tulips and all of the hyacinths and Western flowers, the cherry, because she had lived in France. First thing she says, the flowers are the prayers of the vegetal world. The plants offer their beauty to the Supreme. She speaks of the movement of love and says it is not limited to human beings. And it is perhaps less distorted in other worlds than in the human. How to develop our consciousness in order to work in a better way with plants and flowers. Mother says, first you must learn to be silent. Then note carefully what happens in the consciousness. And this is very interesting because we have a flower called silence, and it's a passion flower. And if you look at it closely, you can see the symbolism of the East and the symbolism of the West. In the West, it is representative of Christ's crucifixion, and in the East, it is the Pandavas and the fighting 100-headed monsters. So, in that silence, we learn that plants have feelings. They are very sensitive, but there is no mental development, and Mother talks about that. But we've had the work of Bose in India, an extraordinary work, Baxter, later on, The Secret Life of Plants, many of you may have read that. And now a book has come out some 10, 12 years ago, Secrets of the Soil, which is extremely profound. And more is being learned about the connectiveness of nature. For example, there'll be an area where a tree is growing and it's impossible for that tree to grow in that area. Absolutely impossible. Wrong soil, wrong climate, wrong rainfall, everything wrong. So these scientists examined that. They found that 50 miles away, there was a grove of trees, same species. And they studied the soil, and they found that underneath, a fungus was being sent by this grove to support that one tree. Now, here's my question. Are there forces directly hostile to vegetal nature? Are insects a manifestation of these forces? Mother writes, there do not seem to exist forces consciously and voluntarily hostile to the vegetal kingdom. Insects do harm because they feed on plants. But in this way, they serve them also. Both things are there, good and bad, without any conscious will. They do good, they do harm, without knowing it. How can flowers help us in our life and in our yoga? Mother, flowers teach us the charm of silence and also the self-giving that demands nothing in exchange. And then, love of flowers is a valuable help in finding and uniting with the psychic. Mother says, the psychic, when it manifests in a plant in the form of a flower, is in the form of a wordless prayer. It is the elan of the plant towards the divine. You know, a great occult scientist could have spent a lifetime going deeply into the vibration of each flower and codifying it, classifying it. Mother has named some 900 flowers in just looking at one. They don't all come at once. She said that. There was some that took a couple of years to tell her through a vibration what they signified. But when we asked Mother for the title of our book, she said this, Flowers and Their Messages. So I want to read you on the plane of matter, they, and then plants, are most open to my influence. I can transmit a state of consciousness more easily to a flower than to a man. It is very receptive, though it does not know how to formulate its experience to itself because it lacks a mind. But the pure psychic consciousness is instinctive to it. When therefore you offer flowers to me, their condition is almost always an index to yours. There are persons who never succeed in bringing a fresh flower to me. Even if the flower is fresh, it becomes limp in their hands. Others, however, always bring fresh flowers and even revitalize drooping ones. If your aspiration is strong, your flower offerings will be fresh. And if you are receptive, you will be also very easily able to absorb the message I put in the flowers I give you. When I give them, I give you states of consciousness. The flowers are the mediums, and it all depends on your receptivity whether they are effective or not. There's a flower up here. How many of you know the flower of gratitude? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 people. Gratitude is a wayside flower that blooms, fades very quickly. If you cut it, it's gone very fast. Now, I wrote a poem once, and I must tell you about this, because to bring her gratitude that would survive the solar stillness, bear the burnt clay road from Oroville to the parent sun. Well, that was the beginning of it. And I would bring her flowers. And she would put into those flowers everything I needed at that moment for the soul to progress. Can there be truly a sadhana through flowers? The answer is an unqualified yes. If you look at some of these, everything of the integral yoga is here. Aspiration for organization, collective emotions open to the divine, realization of the supramental riches, Krishna, many things of Krishna, simplicity, artistic taste, artistic sensibility, spontaneous beauty, disinterested work done for the divine, conversion of the mind, emotional being, physical mind, the physical, the vital. You see, the colors Mother gave us are an indication. So let's begin with those. At the base of matter, it's a darkish red. As it goes into the physical, it becomes a brighter red. In the vital, it's purple. The psychic is always pink. Then we get into the mind, which is yellow. But there are ranges above the mind that become blue until we reach the supermind, which is gold and orange. Of course, perfection and integrality are white, as well as purity. So we have the jasmine, which emanates purity. Now, can we make that contact with our psychic being to help us progress? Well, it's a work of many years, a very deep work. I believe it was Georgia O'Keeffe who said, no one really sees a flower, so she painted a morning glory that large so we could see it. But if we look deeply into a flower, and For me, haiku poetry is so special because it says in just a few beats, I am one who eats his breakfast, gazing at morning glories. It says so much. My first poem of more than 1,500 that I received through the largesse of Sri Aurobindo was in the little room at the top of the stairs of the ashram. I would go to that room every day. It's before the reading room, just before the reading room. Actually, it's the room where Mother gave soup in the early days to the oldest disciples. And in that room, there's a sepia photograph of Sri Aurobindo. Somehow, even at the age of 23, I would go there before going to the Samadhi. And one day I asked my guide, Aurobindo Basu, why do I do this? Oh, he put the presence in there. So his presence is in that photo. So I bowed down to him one day, and he spoke to me. This was the first time he spoke to me. And these 4 lines came. These are the currents of my life. Engulf them in thy sea, the tangled threads of earthly strife, reweave to image thee. But another time when I went in, that was really special. I prostrated myself before him, feeling perhaps a bit pious, and he said the following, and it's good for the circulation too. There's a flower here. Aurelio, humility before the divine. It's a flower that's a wayside flower on the road in Oroville, and no one sees it, usually because it's covered with red dust. But it is a flower that is one of those that speaks most deeply, most sweetly to me. Humility before the divine in the physical nature. I'd like to pass it around because it's very fragrant. Now you can begin to look for it.
There's one more. Can I pass that along?
Yes, please. How did Mother give a name to a flower? You know, I could spend half a day with you on this. Okay, so each flower has a special significance, hasn't it? Mother replies, not as we understand it mentally. There is a mental projection when one gives a precise meaning to a flower. It may answer, vibrate to the touch of this projection, accept the meaning, but a flower has no equivalent of the mental consciousness. In the vegetable kingdom, there is a beginning of the psychic, but there is no beginning of the mental consciousness. In animals, it is different. Mental life begins to form, and for them, things have a meaning. But in flowers, it is rather like the movement of a little baby. It is neither a sensation nor a feeling, but something of both. It is a spontaneous movement, a very special vibration. So, if one is in contact with it, if one feels it, one gets an impression which may be translated by a thought. That is how I have given a meaning to flowers and plants. Notice Mother says, and plants. There is a kind of identification with the vibration, a perception of the quality it represents, and little by little, through a kind of approximation. Sometimes this comes suddenly, occasionally it takes time. There is a coming together of these vibrations, which are of a vital emotional order, and the vibration of the mental thought. And if there is a sufficient harmony, one has a direct perception of what the plant may signify. Savitri. All the world's possibilities in man are waiting as the tree waits in its seed. If we can go deep enough into the vibration of flowers, we will see that there is a progression from matter to the supermind in every instance of a certain flower or a certain group of flowers. The hibiscus Mother loved and named around 50 different hibiscus. 50. 24 roses she named, love for the divine. And we have other flowers that speak to us of the divine's love. One is the pomegranate. When you open the pomegranate, you see these beautiful seeds. Mother has named it divine love spreading over the world. And you see, it's important for us to know more deeply what Mother has also said as a comment. Now, the botanical name for this is divine love. There's a pure white form, unmanifest divine love. There's a single flower that we find on the streets in Pandi and also in Oroville, which is divine sacrifice. So there are 4 pomegranates, 3 flowers, and the fruit, representing the divine love. But there is another flower that grows at Savitri Bhavan. Can you tell us? It's a huge flower, and it usually is nestled amongst the leaves. When my wife passed away, I brought her ashes and we planted it under that tree, and it gives flowers so often. It's a bigger tree now. Divine love governing the world. We see only one side of the problem these days on the earth, and that is man's greed, lust for power. But we don't see yet, and we must begin to feel the power of the supramental in the earth. It's a tremendous power, but it's very quiet yet. But it's growing day by day. The flowers are changing. Transformation. Many of you know the transformation tree with the white flowers that fall down. Mother has spoken about it quite a lot, actually. Pardon? Okay, let's see that.
Something to smell. These ones.
Mother says, do you know the flower I have called transformation? Yes. You know it has 4 petals. Well, these 4 petals are arranged like a cross. One at the top, which represents the transcendent, 2 on each side, the universal, and 1 on the bottom, the individual. The transcendent is 1 and 2, or dual, at the same time. This flower is almost perfect in its form. This was the original meaning of the cross also, but that was not as perfect as the flower, for it was 1, 2, and 3. It was not so good. The flower is perfect. Oh. How many of you do not like mangoes? Okay, not one hand. The mango, and Mother has named fruits. The mango is divine knowledge. When you eat a mango, you are absorbing the divine knowledge. And if we could truly absorb that divine knowledge with our full consciousness, we would have it. The flowers are not complicated, they're very simple. There's a tree called patience, grows in the ashram, beautiful tree. The fruit of this tree, it's just a little round seed, is accomplishment. The fruit of patience is accomplishment. We have the grape. How many of you don't like grapes? Okay, no raised hands again. Divine ananda. Every time you eat a grape, you are taking in divine ananda. You're still taking it in. Because divine ananda controls or eradicates pesticides also. Right. And I want to read you something, a few things. One thing that Mother has said, so beautiful. Life must blossom like a flower, offering itself to the divine. So simple, so profound. This was a good question we asked Mother. Scientists explain that flowers have perfume in order to attract insects. What do you think about that? Mother, it is men who see and find a reason for everything. But I doubt if the Supreme has any such preoccupation. We have asked Mother so many questions, And so the comments that she gave below each significance. The creative word, an incredible significance. The creative word, it's a chrysanthemum. Mother says, belongs only to the divine. Some of you from the West will know very well the hydrangea, which is collective harmony. Mother says, collective harmony is the work undertaken by the divine consciousness. It alone has the power to realize it. So we have this treasure of nearly 900 significances. Do you know there are flowers that vibrate with the message, light in the cells, purity in the cells? We could have that? Thank you. I think there's enough you could pass them around also.
Shall we pass this around?
Sure. A very common flower that we see almost every day is progress.
You want that?
Yes, progress also. Thank you. What does Mother say about progress? She says, the reason why we are on earth. The reason we are on earth. Many kinds of progress, white, pink, lavender, and some of different colors, a couple that have been lost actually. We love orchids. The orchid represents attachment to the divine. And if you study orchids, you will see that they have evolved, many of them have evolved from a terrestrial existence to an epiphytic existence. Epiphytes, not parasites. They take nothing from their host. And so the roots cling to the tree or any other support, and they have evolved to the point where they get all of their food and nutrition from the air, from the rain. They need nothing else. Once I was in the deep forests of South India with, at that time, the head of the French Institute, Dr. Tani Kaimani. And, you know, people say nothing grows under a tamarind tree. We come upon a grove of tamarind trees that were filled with orchids. I have never seen anything like that. Absolutely laden with orchids. And many of those orchids were Vanda, V-A-N-D-A. And the Vanda orchid, interesting here. Emotional attachment for the divine. And attachment in the emotive vital for the divine. So all the planes and parts of the being are explained through the flowers. You can go to the physical, you can go to the vital, you can go to the psychic, to the mind, above the mind. The pale blue flower represents, usually, Sri Aurobindo's color or Krishna's color. And Krishna's light in the mind we have over here also. We've put out some of the cards, the wonderful cards that have been done here. so that afterwards you can see them. And now I'll take any questions that you might have, because I think I've run out of time. Okay. Yes.
I truly appreciate that you're talking about this wonderful flowers on Valentine's Day. I just want to thank you. It's divine synchronicity.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
In fact, the flowers are there for all the year round. Why don't we restrict it to one particular?
Exactly.
And I think that's what.
This is a moment in time.
Yeah,
and it's
sure.
Is the other fruits described in the book as well?
Yes. The fruits are described in the book as well. Yes.
What do we do to enlist to help you with the new book?
Pardon?
There must be many people who want to help with the new book.
Mm-hmm.
What are the help that we
How do we?
Well, we started with a couple of fellows in Delhi, and they have made an app called Flower Song. So you can download that app called Flower Song, and most of the flowers will be on there with their significances. But in order to put this into a book, I would like to have as thorough information as possible. So we would like to know, will it grow here? Or is it a temperate climate plant? Is it an annual or a perennial? And in which climate? Is it a tree or a shrub? Can we classify it? Can we do classifications by colors? Absolutely. And size? Because we have a tiny flower here, and this is an interesting story. It's called First Sign of Krishna's Light in Matter. You know, I tried for maybe 8 years to grow that flower here, and it refused. I would transplant it so carefully. You can see it now. Go into the fields and you'll see it. It's a little bit smaller than my fingernail, and you can see it there. And then I realized, Krishna, okay, I got it. It's your first sign in matter. It's not to be cultivated. It's just the first sign. But then Krishna's light in the mind is huge. You've seen it? Krishna's light in the mind? Oh, yes, we have one here. Yes, can we get that one? Light blue, Krishna's color, rather large flower. It'll be about 3 inches across. Krishna's play, Krishna's integral play. So many flowers for Krishna. Petunia. I guess most of us know petunias. They're enthusiasm. All the petunias are enthusiasm. Zinnia. Zinnia is endurance. Here we are. No, that's not.
Is Krishna's light in the mind? No.
No, this is Krishna's light in the vital. Okay. Anyway, that's good. I'd like to tell you about just a few minutes more. Do I have 2 minutes more? Okay. And this is, I was talking with Vladimir yesterday about this. You see, there's a plant called Thavisha, and Mother has named it Mind. She's also named 2 other colors, but let me tell you about Mind first. Mind grows all around this area. It's a dry climate plant, doesn't need any care, doesn't have any insect problems because it's poisonous. The whole thing is poisonous. The Tamil ladies, when they commit suicide, eat 1 fruit of it and they're finished. The leaf is poisonous, the stem is poisonous, so no goats or cows will come near it. And the flower, at the very base, has the sweetest honey you have ever tasted. Isn't that the mind? I have seen zinnias in the deserts of America, blooming without water for 3 months at a time. Is that endurance? See, we can go even on the physical level and begin to understand the flowers. If you've ever tried to walk through a bougainvillea hedge, you would know that bougainvillea is protection. It's not going to let you get through. And then there are all the colors. Integral protection, white. Vital protection, purple. Attempt at protection, where the flower is split. This is very interesting. There's an orange and a pink one there. Two together. Attempt at or attempt toward protection. Now, I've brought with me yeah, now see, this is vital protection. Single, but this is attempt towards protection, and we have a number of colors. These were developed in the Philippines. And this is physical protection. You can see the dark color here. So through that, the planes of consciousness can be reached as well. I brought some little things that I typed out and I gave to the Om Choir the other night. If we could pass them around, you'll have everything about me, as I said, except my bank account. And then we can work on flowers together. We can speak of Om together. You can write me, and I attempt always to answer every email. So you're most welcome to ask any questions you like about the flowers, and I'll do my best to answer. Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you so much. That's my book. Yeah. And please do come up for a few moments and and have a look at some of the significances here. I've had a lot of help this morning, and there are quite a few out there. I spent about 1 hour from my house going up the road to Oroville, then stopping at different places on the road to cut flowers, and finally going to the Machamandia nursery where I found more. But if I had 2 or 3 hours, I would find 30 or 40 more, just like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Narad, for a very beautiful presentation.